Hello friends, welcome to my channel. This is Abhirami and I am here to discuss with you about today's topic, that is the ribs. So before we get on to the ribs, let me give you an introduction about thorax and the definition of the cervical rib and the lumbar rib. Okay, so a thorax is osteocartilaginous and it has two functions. One is to protect the various viscera present, and the next function is that the thorax is not static but it is dynamic, so it moves at various joints causing many diameters to increase or decrease. So this is helpful in respiration. So now let's talk about the cervical rib. So a cervical rib is present above the first rib, and it is present even above the collarbone, and it may occur only on one side or on the both sides, and it may be completely bony or it may be made up of fibrous tissues. Okay, and a lumbar rib is the 13th rib, which arises from the first lumbar vertebrae or the 13th thoracic vertebrae, which is rarely present in some people. Okay, so now let's move on to the ribs. So the ribs are also called as costae. Okay, and there are 12 ribs on each side, so that makes 24 in total. So in some people the number of ribs may be increased because of the presence of a cervical rib or a lumbar rib. In some people the number of ribs may be decreased because of the absence of the 12th rib. Okay, and the ribs are stacked after one another and they have spaces between them which we call intercostal spaces. So these intercostal spaces are deep in the upper ribs than in the lower ribs, and they're also deep in the anterior end than the posterior end. Okay, so this is the anterior end, that which is attaching to the sternum, and that which is attaching to the vertebral column is the posterior end. So the intercostal spaces are deeper over here than over here. Okay, the ribs are placed obliquely, as you can see in this diagram. This is the obliquity of the ribs. Okay, so they have an oblique angle like this. So the ribs are placed obliquely, and the obliquity of the lower ribs are greater than the upper rib, and so on. The obliquity goes on increasing until the 9th rib, and from the 9th rib to the 12th rib the obliquity gradually decreases. Okay, now let's talk about the length of the ribs. The length of the ribs keeps on increasing until the 7th rib, and from the 7th rib the length starts gradually decreasing until the 12th rib. Okay, and now let's talk about the breadth. The breadth of the ribs decrease from the above downwards, and the anterior end of the rib is broader than the posterior end of the rib for the 1st to the 10th rib. Okay, so the anterior end is this one, so it is broader than the posterior end in the 1st to the 10th rib. Okay, so now let's talk about which ribs are false ribs and which ribs are true ribs. So most of you may already know this, but I'll still tell you again. So true ribs are those which attach themselves anteriorly to the sternum and posteriorly to the vertebral column. Okay, so the 1st rib to the 7th rib are all true ribs, but the 8th, 9th and 10th rib attach themselves to the higher cartilages. Okay, so those are called false ribs. Actually the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th, all 5 are called false ribs, but the 8th, 9th and 10th are called vertebrochondral ribs because they attach themselves posteriorly to the vertebral column and anteriorly to the next higher cartilage. The 11th and 12th rib do not attach themselves anteriorly, so therefore they are called as floating ribs or the vertebral ribs. Okay, now let's differentiate between atypical ribs and the typical ribs. So typical ribs are those ribs which have the same features throughout. So these ribs are 3rd rib to the 9th rib. The atypical ribs are the first 3 ribs and the last 2 ribs which have some special features. So today we are going to be talking about the features of the typical rib, the attachments of the typical rib and the ossification of a typical rib. Okay. So now let's talk about the features of a typical rib. Okay, so the typical rib has an outer surface and inner surface, an anterior end and a posterior end, and then it has a upper border and a lower border. Okay, so this is the anterior end, this is the posterior end. The outer surface is the one you can see from this side, and the inner surface is this surface. Okay, and it has a upper border and a lower border. This is the upper border and this is the lower border. Now let's divide the features of a typical rib into the anterior end, posterior end and the shaft. Okay, so the anterior end is this part and it is concave and oval for the attachment with the costal cartilage. Okay, and the posterior end is made up of three parts, that is the head, neck and tubercle. Okay, so this is the head, this is the neck, this region is the neck and this is the tubercle. First let's talk about the head. So the head has two facets which are divided by a crest, and the lower facet is larger than the upper facet. Okay, and the lower facet articulates with the numerically corresponding vertebra, and the upper facet articulates with the next higher vertebrae. Okay, so this is the head. The lower facet will articulate with the corresponding vertebrae and the upper facet will articulate with the next higher vertebrae, that is the second one. Okay, so the next thing is the neck. The neck is this region, and the neck is present in front of the transverse process of the numerically corresponding vertebrae. So this is the neck region. So this is the transverse process of the third thoracic vertebrae. So this neck is present in front of the transverse process of the thoracic vertebrae. Okay, the neck has two surfaces, that is the anterior surface and posterior surface, and it has two borders, that is the superior border and the inferior border. So the anterior surface is smooth and the posterior surface is rough. The superior border is thin and the inferior border is rounded. Okay, so that is all about the neck. Now let's talk about the tubercle. The tubercle is present at the outer surface of the rib and it is present at the junction of the neck and the shaft. Okay, so it is present at the junction of the neck and the shaft, and the lateral part of the tubercle is not articular. Okay, and the medial part of the tubercle is only articular. So the medial part articulates with the transverse process of the numerically corresponding vertebrae. So let's say it's the third vertebrae, then the tubercle will articulate. The tubercle is present on the outer surface, so it will articulate with the transverse process over here. So now let's talk about the shaft of the rib. So the shaft of the rib has two surfaces, that is the outer surface and inner surface, and it has two borders, the upper border and the lower border, and it has two ends, the anterior end and the posterior end. As you can all see, the shaft is convex from the outwards and it has an angle. So this part is the angle of the rib. This angle is where the shaft is bent, and also the shaft gets twisted at this angle. Okay, so now let's talk in detail about the shaft. So the outer surface of the shaft is the one that has the angle. An oblique ridge is present over the angle and it moves downwards and laterally. So this is the oblique ridge at the angle, so it moves downwards and laterally. Okay, now let's talk about the inner surface. So the inner surface is smooth and it is covered by a pleura, and in the lower border of the neck, so from the posterior surface, let's come over here. So in the posterior surface, the posterior part in the lower border of the neck, from there is a ridge which is continuous to the lower border of the shaft, and between this ridge and the lower border only the costal groove is present. Okay, so this is the costal groove which is present between the ridge and the lower border. Okay, and the costal grooves carries the posterior intercostal vessels and the intercostal nerve. Okay, the last part of the shaft is the upper border. The upper border of the shaft is thick and it has two lips, the inner lip and the outer lip. Okay, so now let's move on to the attachments of the rib. So the attachments are mainly to the head, neck and shaft. Okay, so in the head, the crest gives rise to the intra-articular disc of the costovertebral ligament. So this is the crest of the head. Okay, you can see the intra-articular ligament of the costovertebral joint. So the head gives attachment to the intra-articular ligament, and the head also gives attachment anteriorly to the radiate ligament. Okay, so this is the radiate ligament. The head gives attachment to the radiate ligament, and the heads of the upper ribs are related to the costal pleura, and the heads of the lower ribs are related to the sympathetic chain. Okay, now let's talk about the attachments to the neck. So we were talking about a tubercle which has a medial articular part and a lateral non-articular part. So the lateral non-articular part of the tubercle gives attachment to the lateral costotransverse ligament. Okay, and the inferior costotransverse ligament attaches itself to the posterior rough surface of the neck. Okay, over here. And there are two lamina for the superior costotransverse ligament. So both the lamina of the superior costotransverse ligament attach themselves to the crest of the neck. Okay, so this part which is bulged over here is the crest of the neck. So the superior costotransverse ligament attaches itself to the crest of the neck. Now let's talk about the attachments to the shaft. So first is the thoracolumbar fascia and the lateral fibers of the sacrospinalis, which are attached to the angle. So this is the angle, so they are attached over here. And about 5 centimeters from the anterior end, so somewhere about here, there is an anterior angle which is marked by a indistinct oblique line. Okay, so there is an indistinct oblique line from the 5 centimeters and it is called the anterior angle, and it separates the origins of the external oblique muscle from the serratus anterior muscle. So this is for the 5th rib to the 8th rib, but the 9th rib and the 10th rib have a different condition. For them, the anterior angle separates the external oblique muscle and the latissimus dorsi muscle. Okay, so the next thing is the internal intercostal muscles. So the internal intercostal muscles arise from the floor of the oblique groove or the costal groove. Okay, and then the intercostalis intimus arises from the middle 2/4 of the ridge above the groove. So there is a ridge above the groove, right? So from the middle 2/4 of the ridge above the groove, the intercostalis intimus arises. Okay, and the subcostalis is attached to the inner surface of the lower ribs. Okay, so the last thing that we're going to talk about is that the external intercostal is attached to the outer lip on the outer border. Okay, but the internal intercostal and the intercostal intimus muscle are attached to the inner lip on the inner border. We have come to the end of this session. So the last topic is going to be ossification. So now let's talk about the ossification of a typical rib. So the typical rib ossifies in cartilage from one primary center and three secondary centers. Okay, the primary center appears in the shaft near the angle. So over here at the 8th week of the intrauterine life. There are three secondary centers. The first secondary center appears in the head and the other two are for the tubercle. So they appear in the age of 16 and they fuse by the 25th year. Okay, so that is the end of this session. Thank you for listening to me. If you like this video, please like, share, subscribe and comment on it. And if you have doubts in bones of the upper limb chapter 2, you can visit my previous videos. And if you have doubts in introduction to thorax, you can visit my previous videos for that too. Thank you.